So, Mark, you played TIE Pilot in The Force Awakens, and we're very happy to have you representing the Jolly Roger Squadron. So, for those who aren't aware of you, who are you?
So yeah, my name's Mark Everex Collett. I'm English, as you probably can tell by my accent. I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. It's the first film I ever watched back in 1978 when I was 2 years old. Um, my dad took me to see Star Wars because he's a massive sci-fi fan, and he always ribs me because I fell asleep before the end. I fell asleep on the when the Death Star attacks Yavin 4, so he always takes the mickey out of me for that. So I've been an extra in a number of films, and obviously the highlight of my extring career was being a TIE fighter pilot in the Force Awakens.
So, that's a remarkable thing, considering Force Awakens kickstarted what we now know as the new Star Wars. How did that end up happening? Like, how did you get that role of, I got to be a TIE pilot?
Well, so I live quite close to Pinewood, and me, a number of my friends, my brother, my mother and father, we've all been extras in movies in Pinewood. You know, it's just like one of those things. It's kind of like a hobby. And my dad, he kind of knows a few people in Pinewood. So when they were filming for Star Wars, we sent our photos in. I wasn't good looking enough to actually not wear a helmet, which is kind of lucky, but I had the right measurements to be like, so my height, my size was perfect to be either a stormtrooper or a TIE fighter. So they selected me to be a TIE fighter pilot. I kind of knew that I was going. It was Star Wars because it's all a bit hush hush, and that's what we'd applied to do. Unfortunately, my dad didn't get in. He's a bit larger than me and a bit older, so and a bit uglier, so he
Oh,
definitely wasn't in. But so I turned up at Pinewood. Had to sign a massive contract. You know, it was huge before they'd say anything. And then I was told, you're in the Star Wars film. And it was relatively early on. They'd just started filming, but the TIE fighter pilot suits still weren't ready yet. So they kind of, because I think it was around about 70 stormtrooper outfits and about 5 TIE fighter costumes. So they were more made to measure with the TIE fighter costumes, you know. So I've got a picture. I don't know if this works, but that's my fitting photo. And as you can see, the helmet's already, they haven't got any of the detail on the chest there. The belt's just a standard Imperial officer belt. And the arm bits weren't done yet, but they were still building the costume. They just wanted to make sure that it looked all right. So yeah, so that's me. I turned up as soon as I saw that helmet. I went, "That's a TIE fighter pilot." And all the fitters were like, "No, you can't even mention Star Wars, let alone it might not be a TIE fighter pilot." But because I'm an avid Star Wars fan, I instantly knew that is a TIE fighter pilot. I'm going to be a TIE fighter pilot. I was just so excited, you know. I just didn't want to take the suit off. And that's how I got into it, really. It's just luck. The amazing thing also being on set is probably more than 50% of people were Star Wars fans working on it. You had a few people who didn't know what Star Wars was, which I thought was just weird. but yeah, there was such an excitement. Most people were really excited to be doing something around Star Wars.
that's awesome. Like, imagine, like, again, this is like, maybe, what year was that? Because Force Awakens came out in 2015, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was it 2014?
So it was like a year out from, like, everyone's hyped up. Everyone's like, okay, there's going to be Star Wars. We have not had Star Wars since 2005. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that must have gone to you as like, I get to be part of the Kickstart. And again, did you have an idea that you thought this was going to be a one-off, or do you think this was going to be as big of a deal as it was?
I knew they were doing the trilogy. You know, I didn't realize how much of a Kickstarter would be. Although Disney owning the rights, you kind of knew they're going to try to do something with it. And yeah, and I knew it was big. There, when you're on set, you know, there was just something about it, and it really did, like, you know, because the main scenes I was in was the TIE fighter chase scene, you know, through the desert and into the I think it's a superstar destroyer that you fly into, and in the TIE fighter hangar. And it was huge. You know, the great thing about it was that they were avoiding green screen, so there was green screen in it, but it wasn't like the props were there. You know, you had some really massive sets which looked amazing. Yeah, I knew it was going to be big, and it just felt like that. You know.
Oh yeah. So, what exactly, if you had to say, what is your favorite TIE variant then? TIE fighter variant?
In what way?
Like, which one is your favorite personal favorite? Like, which one would you say is like out the arsenal?
My personally, my favorite TIE fighter is the TIE Interceptor. I just like the shape. You know, I like the way it seems more practical because you've got more visibility, because you've got the cutouts. You know, and it's similar to the advanced TIE that Darth Vader flies, but I just like the shape. You know, that kind of more rectangular type look to it. I do like the new TIE fighters, so first order TIE fighters. I like the way they switch the colors, you know, so they look far more insect like, I think, with the kind of the white. I think they're referred to as solar panels sometimes, but you know, it's all, you know, that kind of flip of the colors I think works quite well. But I'm you know, I was a bit disappointed that they never created a TIE Interceptor for the sequels. You know, I thought that would be awesome if they had one of them. Yeah.
Well, they got the TIE Silencer and then TIE Whisper, but it's like, I absolutely agree. The TIE Silencer is pretty much like, it's Kylo's vessel. And
Yeah,
there was never a TIE Interceptor for the FO.
For me, it's all about the cockpit. You know, the screen that you're looking through. Like the thing that defines a TIE fighter for me is that sort of circular screen with the octagon in it, or hexagon. You know, it's the shape. You stick that in front of anything, and it becomes some form of TIE.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I actually have collected some questions from fellow Jolly Roger Squadron members asking questions about you. We're going to start off with Kevin Pimentel. He is TI 12335 from Puerto Rico Garrison. And he is curious, were you sweating a lot during the scenes in Force Awakens? And how did it feel after you got the armor removed from filming?
Yeah, so they were long days. They were. I think you were in the costume for about 12 hours, and you know, anyone in 501st knows what it feels like to be in a costume for a long period of time. One of the TIE fighter pilots who was in the hangar scene had to be taken out because the heat of the lights, and you're essentially, this is one of the crew. You got this for the crew, like jumpers.
I love that.
It's basically, yeah, wearing something which is kind of insulated and quite heavy. The actual costumes on set, they're really thick and robust, so that I fell down the stairs once, and it's so that they don't break, you know. So yeah, it did get really hot. There was the added problem as well. The stormtroopers had a little zip so they could go to the toilet, whereas they didn't because there's only 5 TIE fighter pilots. They didn't put any zip on, so you had to constantly balance drinking enough water to stay hydrated, yet try not to drink too much, because you don't want to go to the loo, because then you're not on set, if you see what I mean. You know, you're always kind of balancing that act. But yeah, it was hot. I guess the one good thing though is at least your arms are quite flexible. So when you went, I can remember sitting down to eat lunch with all the stormtroopers, and I could bend my arms to eat my food, whereas the stormtroopers had to hold the fork right at the very end and kind of do this.
Oh my goodness.
That's when I thought, wow, I might not be able to go to the loo as easy, but at least I can eat my food.
That sounds very reminiscent of when I'm doing events in the Bible verse as well, where it's like I'm a TIE pilot myself, and of course I'm like, I'll just sit down here and Stormtrooper's like, please stop doing that. You're making us mad.
Yeah.
All right, we got a question from Jeff Gurup. He himself is another fellow first order TIE pilot, second costume actually. So he's curious about how heavy the movie costume helmet was compared to aim for those who aren't where you are an approved member of the File First for your own first order TIE pilot.
Yeah, so the helmet was heavy because it's fiberglass. So unlike the Stormtrooper helmets, they seem to be like kind of vacuum formed or mass produced. They're quite light. Whereas the again, because there are so few TIE fighter pilot helmets, that they just built them with fiberglass, and the fiberglass itself was quite heavy. When I did the fitting, so with this, they hadn't even bothered to put any sort of foam inside the helmet.
Oh,
so we did ask them to do that for when we're on set, and it was just foam blocks. It's very simple. Like, I'm always amazed at how many fans and kind of different things that when you're customizing a helmet for the 501st, you're thinking about comfort, but when you're building a lot of props to be worn by a bunch of extras, it's like, well, we don't have to make them too comfortable, just as long as they look good on screen. So there was no comfort. And again, like I said, the armor was heavier because it was really thick. It was, it's really robust. And yeah, and it did after that amount of time, it did start to hurt, cut into your arms. I've actually got some. This is what I've got. I had an old wetsuit, so on the first day of filming, when I got home, I cut this out so I could just put it like that, so it didn't hurt so much. So although it's not actually part of the costume, that's the one bit.
Is that if we want to get your exact pilot approved for extra certification, we got to do that ourselves. Is that what? Yeah. All right. Sounds like a good change to make.
Yeah.
No. So how much heavier would you say that is compared to what you currently have for your approved first order TIE pilot?
I would say that overall probably about twice as heavy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that thick. But I like when I if I troop with the costume I've got, I'm really protective, because if you fall over, you're going to probably split the plastic. But these, they were so strong, it's unbelievable. They always do that with any kind of costume or prop, because it's going to be worn for days on set. They know they've got to make it robust and strong.
Oh yeah, makes sense. So Chris Webb is asking, what was the first time you got to put on the helmet? Now I will say, let's say it's the final fitting, like where you had everything ready for the costume, everything was ready, everything was put together. What was that feeling like?
Oh, that was cool. Getting the first time I put on the helmet was when I did that first fitting, but it was when it all came together, So, and you're getting suited up by the costume staff who, and they're used to doing, like, you can imagine in the UK period dramas with like people in massive frocks and wearing wigs and things, and they just treat it exactly the same way. So you've got like 3 people coming around you slowly putting on this armor, and it felt absolutely amazing. All they do is get you to stand there and just like put it all together. Yeah, and then on set, I can remember someone coming up to me, and then the other guy who's the TIE fighter pilot on set, and saying, I don't think they really knew what Star Wars was, but they knew it looked cool. Because they're saying, you guys look so much cooler than the Stormtroopers. You're the coolest people on set. And then Captain Phasma turned up, Chrome Trooper. We didn't know who she was at the time, but of course she looks amazing, like chrome. Like, I was thinking, well, no, that's obviously the coolest person on set now.
No, it's just again, going through the process of being able to see these things before they happen, like before you
Mm,
realize how culturally significant these costumes become, is
mm.
something different. All right, we got a question from Aaron Atwood. He is curious about your experience in relationship to Luke's infamous quote of "I can't see a darn thing in his helmet."
Oh yeah,
How
you
bad
couldn't
is
see anything. It was so what they did, because like health and safety was a big thing. So there was 2 days of boot camp before you even went on set. Um, the TIE fighter pilots only had to do a day, and our costumes weren't ready, which was really weird because all the stormtroopers. So imagine there's an ex-sergeant from, taking a few drills like marching, running about, walking up and down stairs. And you had 70 stormtroopers all in gear. And then they're saying, "Oh, sorry, your costume's not going to be ready. We still got to make a few adjustments." So you're just running around in your normal clothes. Um, and then they decided you only need a day and not 2 days. But then getting on set, the first scene we did was we had there's some steps in the hangar scene. They didn't use this footage, but we walked down the steps, and the first thing I did, because I couldn't see the floor, I couldn't see anything, just like poor old Luke. And that's when I slipped down the stairs. But then by the end of after, it's funny, after a few days it got really used to it. So we were just running up and down the stairs. Like there's scenes where you had to run leg it. Again, they weren't used, but when the TIE fighter that Finn and Poe steal, we were running past as they set up the heavy weapons to fire at them, and that was awesome. Yeah, I nearly stood on a droid that time as well, and yeah, so no, good fun.
I can imagine, like, specifically for anyone who's listening who is currently an active member in the 501st, and even those that are listening in being like, I'm afraid to join or I'm afraid of helmets, you will get used to it. And
Mm,
that's the thing that you got people definitely understand. Baby steps. You first learn to wear the helmet, you learn your limitations.
mm.
That's awesome that you also had enough time to get adapt to wearing that helmet, which is something that I don't feel like everyone gets an opportunity to when they do filming of any kind, to be honest. So that's really special to hear. So we have a question from Stephen Smith from Alabama Garrison, TI 5303. How much time did you spend on set versus how much they show on screen? You pretty much went over that earlier, that there was a lot of cut stuff. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of time. So there was for that hangar scene, it was about 4 days. It of filming, and they cut so much. And with when I was actually flying the TIE fighter in the desert, that they took it. It was what I think it's what's called a splinter group. So so they had their own director from Industrial Light and Magic, and they they took me through the entire scene from beginning to end, filmed it all, and then they cut out the bits where you went into the when they filmed the cockpit. So they explained in quite a lot of detail how the scene was going to work. You're chasing the Millennium Falcon, the guns jam, you go through the Super Star Destroyer, come out, get shot, and we went through it a number of times. I also got the opportunity to watch J.J. Abrams with John Boyega doing the gunner scene before, because they used exactly the same lighting rig to light both of them. So they did the view from the guns in the Millennium Falcon first, and then they moved the lighting rig to the TIE fighter scene, and then they just ran through the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And for those who aren't aware, which of those TIE fighters are you? Which one are you in?
I was in both, so they just swapped
both of you.
Yeah, so there's four. They had four helmets and you can see there's a continuity error actually in the film. Yeah, as you can imagine, I'm probably the most. I've watched it through. So they had a helmet with the writing across the top.
All right.
There's a helmet which was never used, which has the first order symbol on the top of the helmet. You know, like the circle just there.
Yeah.
And they filmed it, but it's never used. Then they had the elite special forces with the red stripes, and then they had just a plain helmet. And if you watch it incredibly slowly, like I always do, and annoy my children, is you can see that in one part they've got the red stripe helmet and just a helmet without the writing, and then I think towards the end of the chase you see that it's the helmet with the writing on. So they didn't realize. Yeah, so there's actually 3 TIE fighter pilot helmets
for only 2 TIE fighters,
and only 2 TIE fighters. Yeah, and all they did was just swap the helmets out and say, do it with this helmet on, do it with this helmet on.
Okay. I didn't realize that you actually were in both cockpits. Okay, that's awesome to know. And Steven's other question is, how does it feel that you were part of Star Wars? Like, what do you think is your biggest takeaway from I got to contribute to Star Wars?
It's just incredible. You know, we finished filming probably about 10 o'clock that night. So I can remember sitting in the car park at Pinewoods, almost crying with joy to realize that I'd flown a TIE fighter pilot. I've flown a TIE fighter in Star Wars. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then I mean, I told a few people, but I wasn't allowed to tell anyone because of the NDAs until the film came out. Yeah, it was just incredible. I remember one of the crew I was chatting to. There's a lot. The thing about working in film is there's a huge amount of standing around drinking coffee. You know, so in just chatting to people. I was chatting to this one guy, and he was saying, I was like, I can't believe it. I'm going to fly a TIE fighter, and he said it's like being Neil Armstrong. You know, it's like going back to the moon. Obviously it's not as good as that, but it was that exciting for me. I told my kids, and my son, when the film came out, he had someone from a local radio station come in. He must have been only about 4 at the time at school. And he said, my dad's in Star Wars. And so his teacher actually phoned my wife because they thought my son was just lying to them. It was ridiculous. My wife had to say, no, he is actually in Star Wars. So I got like locally famous as well. And
so that's very off-topic question. How did your kids stay quiet about this? Because I know if I was told that my father was in a Star Wars, I don't know what parently magic did you do for that.
No, they didn't really. They told all their friends. Really, yeah, and then of course when it came, it was quite. I think they quite liked the fact because they would tell their friends that I was in Star Wars, and they wouldn't believe them and stuff. And then I'd say, yeah, I was actually in Star Wars. You know, I can remember one little kid started when I told it. He's like, "Who are you?" And I said, "Like, I was a TIE fighter pilot. I was part of the First Order." So he just started kicking me in the leg. Proper Jedi.
So again, you are an approved Final First member. So how long after Force Awakens came out did you start getting stuff together to build yourself the First Order TIE pilot?
Wow, it came about because I've even for years I've been a big Star Wars fan, like not the biggest, but more than your average person. And I've known about the 501st. I've known the history of the 501st. I've really liked it, how it started, the kind of the whole attitude, the whole culture. And I was just looking at the costume reference library because I was thinking, I wonder if they've done this already. And I saw that there was a costume, and I looked at it, and I thought, this is amazing with such little detail. It was not that long after the film had come out, and it's Jason Paulin who produced this brilliant reference. And there's a few things which I thought, well, it was actually, you know, there was only some very minor details which I picked up on. I thought, oh, I'll just email Jason and say, oh, you know, when I wore it on set, it looked a bit like this. There's a couple of things like the collar, right? The weird thing was people have different size necks, so we just used a stormtrooper collar, which also includes a large bib. You know, so that was one of the things that went out. Yeah, and it was just they'd go, right, you know, measure your neck. They'd go to the stormtrooper. They had a big bucket of collars for the stormtroopers. They'd find the one which had the right size neck. And there's a few tiny details which I just emailed Jason. It's like, oh man, that's amazing. And then him and Adam Peterson invited me in as like kind of an honorary member of the Jolly Roger Squadron, and I just started giving people bits of advice here and there about stuff, like, but not like I'm not a build, you know. I was in awe of the people who are making these costumes more than. But if people ask me questions, I just answer them. And then Gio Rodriguez, he makes costumes. He's like, oh, as gratitude, let's club together and get Mark his own costume. I was like, oh, that's so nice. So I got all these bits of costume sent to me, and I was like, I started trying to put it together, and then I realized how hard it was going to be. So then a guy who's also in Jolly Roger's Squadron, Mark Shearman, he's like, oh, don't worry, mate, I'll help you out. So he put it all together for me, and that's how the suit came about. Yeah, and that's how I get, because I guess I'm not sure. I mean, I think with the whole pandemic and stuff, I think my I think I'm on the reserves now, to be honest, because I haven't been able to troop. But I think I was probably one of the few honorary members that also became an active member. So yeah, it was just because the kindness of the Jolly Roger Squadron, really, that I managed to get my own suit, my own costume.
Yeah, it's like, again, that shows what we do as an organization. We're always there to help others. So like, you were in the movie, so let's make sure that you can continue fulfilling that feeling of I got to be in that movie by getting that suit. And I guess probably the last question I can think of is, how much more comfortable is the costume you're wearing now versus the one in the movie? Like, is there anything that you feel like is especially different? You mentioned the helmet being heavier in the movie. Anything else?
It's lighter. It's more comfortable because if you feel discomfort, you can modify it. The one thing is, because I'm so precious about, I'm almost. You get quite. I mean, everyone in 501st knows what I mean. You kind of don't want it damaged, so you're just far more wary. You know, I do feel that I'd hate to fall over in it. Whereas when I was on set, I didn't mind sort of running into a wall now and again, and they'd just take you up as well. I was thinking this a costume reference library on like one of the last days of shooting in the hangar. The gauntlets, falling apart, and you have these guys on set, and they have loads of like, do you use the term duct tape or
gaffer's tape? Is probably what it was.
Gaffer tape, yeah. They just had he just wrapped around gaffer tape on it. So there you go. So possibly that could be like in the costume reference library, just a bit of gaffer tape around your arm. Who knows?
You might be aware, like a lot of costumes, specifically, well, even in new movies, but you can see plenty in the original trilogies that in A New Hope, there are plenty of stormtroopers with just gaffer's tape on their armor. And I honestly think it makes it more charming when you notice stuff like that. And just hearing that, it's like, yeah, we're just going with gaffer's tape. We don't need to permanently fix it. It's just, I think that adds to the Star Wars charm because it's an imperfect universe.
Yeah, that's why I mean, I do. I enjoy Star Trek. I watched that a lot when I was a kid and stuff, but I always felt more of a leaning towards Star Wars because it was unclean. Everything's a bit broken and damaged and realistic. It's not. That's why I think a sand trooper. I prefer a sand trooper than a shiny stormtrooper on a Death Star, because there's something about kind of ruggedness of Star Wars, which really it's a real element to it, I think.
And probably the last question I'll have is, if you worked on another costume, doesn't have to be time related, you're not going to be upset. If you worked on another costume for the 501st, what costume would it be?
Wow, it'd have to be something Mandalorian, really. I've always loved Boba Fett.
Fair.
I like that whole bounty hunter, and again, it comes to that damage look. The dent in his helmet, the that sort of detail. Some kind of badass mashed up Mandalorian. I think that's what I'd do.
Well, we'll hope that we can get that done at some point. We would love to have you do that. Well, thank you for your time, Mark, and take care. And you got your specs.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I look forward to more trooping once we're out of this lockdown.
Oh yeah, it'd be great.